That's it. That's it. We've finally hit our limit. Our SaaS tools have become like the junk drawer of our business, a ton of overlapping things. Sometimes you find like something cool, but really nobody really understands what the hell's in there. And everyone is kind of sick of that confusion. So there's three forces I see, and of course I'd love you guys to add to this list, that's kind of cleaning up that SaaS garbage that I think we'll really focus on as far as industry strategies in 2026. And as always, these are what I see, right? It's more important that we have a conversation about what all of us see as opposed to one-sided opinion. That's how you really drill down into understanding what strategy is best for you, because it doesn't matter what I say, it matters what's best for your business. So the recipe formula for success that I'm going to break down and talk about is AI, consolidation, and vertical SaaS. I couldn't be more clear. When I say AI, I mean software that does the work, not just organizes and tracks it. We're done with the fancy dashboards that don't actually mean anything. We go from a system of record to a system of execution. And this is the big shift, right? Because we could talk about AI in a theoretical way all day long, but until it actually produces results, it doesn't matter. You could have the coolest, shiniest, most beautiful AI system on the market, but if you can't, as a team, execute to produce those results, and the results I'm talking about is the shift from passive to active. Results are faster, teams are leaner, implementations should be shrinking in the timeline. Entire tool categories disappear because AI is able to collapse that into one system. I'm going to give you an example of this one because, again, I think a lot of people freak out when they hear, well, what do you mean teams get leaner? What do you mean, all of these robots are going to be chasing me around, stealing my job? That's not what I mean. So let's break it down. It's not that deep. Let's take HR. It's very disarming, right? So you have an employee that starts on Monday. Before your HR AI, you had to use, say, 4 or 5 different systems to get this employee onboarded. HR had to set up an employee record. IT had to manually create their email accounts and other accounts they might need access to. Finance needs to look at their payroll. And the manager had to assign them to teams. With the HR's workflow AI engine, this all now happens automatically. HR enters the hiring data, which triggers the AI workflow. That IT provisioning happens on its own. It automatically creates accounts in Google Workspace, Slack, SAP, whatever else you need to have accounts for. Then the finance setup is completed automatically. The new employee is assigned to the correct cost center, compensation plan, payrolls, no spreadsheets, or no back and forth emails. And then finally, any sort of departmental requirements are executed. There's safety trainings assigned, issued equipment orders, and then notifies the supervisor when this employee has completed the training without anyone touching a system whatsoever. In the before times, right, this would have taken several days. Now, this takes seconds with the use of a good, healthy, managed AI operator. System of record versus system of execution. That's the money spot, my friends. A lot goes into that. So let's not just pretend it's a magic one that we can do overnight. It takes discipline and hard work to evaluate and implement those workflows. But once you do, that's where you can really save the time and efficiency, not to mention have a way better onboarding experience, which then, leads to employees leaving less. So number 2 trend we're going to unpack in this equation is consolidation. What is actually happening in the SaaS industry? We've seen this for decades, right? These hundreds of thousands of micro solutions being gobbled up by bigger tech. This isn't necessarily new, but it's different now in the fact that we've seen all of these SaaS startups kind of pop into the marketplace. Doesn't matter if they're cool or not. It really matters if they're able to integrate with the client's bigger tech stack. A lot of times those integrations are going to lead to acquisitions. On a macro level, an example of this would be like Cisco acquiring Splunk and for the $28 billion acquisition. Splunk is an awesome product. It's a great security platform, but it always just kind of stood alone there. People could use it as long as it integrated with their bigger operating system. And the reason Cisco stepped in is because obviously it made its core product better, but a lot of its customers were like, hey, we like this product, but we want a unified intelligence layer, right? We don't want a bunch of different network visibilities that don't talk to each other. The systems that are winning here are the ones that solve like very mission critical problems. You could say the same thing with SAP acquiring WalkMe, which is a digital adoption platform. Users don't want another system, right? I have never heard a client come to me and be like, yes, let's add a 1500th system that we have to manage and figure out how to get to talk to each other. So these acquisitions will continue to happen. It's your job, right, as the buyer to be aware of what's going on in your network. The last one is vertical SaaS. And the reason we see this is horizontal SaaS has really hit a ceiling. I just did a live the other day about how ERP is dead. I think if you have an ERP system and that works for you, awesome. It doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks is dead. But what really matters is people don't want platforms for everyone anymore. They want industry-specific solutions that are going to specialize in making their business, their competitive advantage more streamlined. These often feel more like they're built in-house, which they obviously should be built, customized in-house. I can't stress that enough. Because they're so industry specific, they're solving the problems that these customers have in their ecosystem on a daily basis. And these aren't like the category specific systems I was just talking about. They're being kind of gobbled up. These can stand on their own. I'm talking about things like Procore for the construction industry. It's specific to this industry. We're talking about things like field crews, subcontractors, RFIs, material delays, all of those different weather disruptions that come into factor for this industry specifically. Many of you have seen this in the restaurant industry with something like Toast, which is a point of sale system that is specific for restaurants. It's not just another POS, right? It looks at things like menu engineering, kitchen display system, online ordering, which we saw a lot of new requirements needed from COVID. And that's why restaurants adopt to it and never leave it, because it solves everything they could possibly ask for. It takes into consideration their feedback directly, not another industry that's trying to implement the same system. So if you're in an evaluation now, you need to get deep into what that system does for your industry, how it's going to solve your problems specifically. So when you put these three factors together in your overall technology equation, it sets up a very different buying landscape. Leaner, smarter, industry focused. Three of those trends, forces, whatever, but focused on results.